When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. I remember sitting on the edge of the sofa, my hands folded in my lap, heart beating quietly, trying to make sense of her words. "We got married yesterday," she said, looking at me as if it were the simplest thing in the world. I blinked, then blinked again. The house felt suddenly too small, the walls too close. I had always thought I would see this day coming slowly, like a soft wave rolling in. We had talked about weddings, about love, about family. And yet here it was. A truth dropped in my lap like a stone. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to cry or yell. But instead, I let a soft smile settle on my face. I couldn't help it. I wanted to give her a moment of peace before the storm of questions came. I sat there quietly, watching her, trying to see her the way I always had, my son's partner, the woman I had welcomed into our home and hearts. And yet, something felt different. Something had shifted. I could feel it in the way she avoided my eyes, in the tight line of her lips. The air between us was suddenly heavier. It is strange, I thought, how quickly life can change. One day, you are living in routine. You have morning coffee at the kitchen table, soft chatter about small things. And the next, the ground beneath your feet seems uncertain. I would later think about this moment many times, how a few words could tip a whole world sideways. I didn't speak, I only nodded. "I see," I said softly, and inside my mind raced with all the questions I was too polite to ask. How long had this been planned? Why hadn't anyone told me? And most of all, how would my son feel? My son, who had always been careful, kind, thoughtful. Was he happy? Had I missed something? Our family had always been small, quiet, and close. My husband, my son, and I, our days flowed like gentle rivers. Evenings meant shared dinners, little talks about work or school, the laughter of small victories and the soft sighs of everyday frustrations. We were a family that understood the rhythm of each other's hearts without needing many words. My son had always been careful with people. He didn't rush into things. I thought I knew him completely, his thoughts, his dreams, the things that made him anxious or excited. And then he met her. She came into our lives like a gentle breeze that could not be ignored. Smart, warm, thoughtful. At first, I was cautious. I had learned that love can be messy, and I wanted my son to be safe. But she had a way of smiling that felt like sunlight in a dim room. We spent months learning to live together. Family dinners turned into shared stories about her day, our son's day, my day. She told me about her work, her friends, her childhood. I told her about my dreams and regrets. Slowly, she became part of the quiet rhythm of our house. I felt, deep inside, that she truly cared about him, and that mattered more than anything. And yet, life is never just calm waters. Small things began to shift without warning. She would sometimes disappear for hours, texting quietly on her phone, laughing softly alone. My son seemed distracted in a new way that I didn't understand. I remember feeling a small pinch in my chest, a tiny unease, but I told myself I was imagining things. We talked about marriage sometimes, but it felt far away, like a story someone else was living. My son always said, "We'll see when the time is right, Mom, don't worry." And I believed him, I trusted her. Our house felt safe. And yet, sometimes, safety is only a shadow until reality touches it. It started with small things I barely noticed at first. A text left on the kitchen counter. A quiet glance exchanged between them that seemed secretive. I told myself I was imagining it. Families notice small changes, even when love is still present. I wanted to trust. I really did. One evening, my son and I were washing dishes together after dinner. The air smelled of soap and simmering stew. I asked him how his day had been. "Good," he said, but there was a hesitation I couldn't name. "What's on your mind?" I asked gently. "Nothing, Mom," he said, avoiding my eyes. He stacked the dishes quietly, and I watched the way his hands trembled slightly. My chest tightened. I tried to shake off the feeling, but I couldn't. Something was brewing, and I felt it. Later, I noticed her disappearing into the bedroom for long periods. She would return with a calm smile, but there was a weight behind it that I could feel. I tried to speak to her, softly, as one might test the water before swimming. "Are you okay?" I asked one afternoon, when the light poured across the living room floor like warm honey. She nodded. "I'm fine," she said, but the words were too quick, too precise. My heart sank slightly. I realized then that secrets were starting to form between us, not out of malice, but out of necessity. She was hiding something, and I had no idea what. Weeks went by. The tension didn't grow suddenly. It crept in, like shadow moving across a wall. I began noticing small discrepancies. The way she spoke about her day, the small things left unmentioned. My son would laugh at a text I hadn't seen, a conversation I hadn't heard. I tried to tell myself these were normal parts of adult life. Privacy, independence, I understood that. But as a mother, it's impossible to stop noticing when something is off. Something important was happening, and I wasn't allowed in the room where it lived. One evening, I poured tea and joined them on the couch. The house was quiet, except for the soft rain tapping on the window. My son and she sat close together, hands brushing lightly. I could hear her laugh at something he whispered. "Did you two watch a movie today?" I asked, trying to speak casually. They both looked up. Her smile was a little too quick. "No, Mom," she said. I nodded, trying not to read too much into it. But inside, I felt a small, twisting knot. Something was happening that I couldn't see, something I wouldn't see until it was too late. Days later, my son came into the kitchen. He was quieter than usual, shoulders heavy with unspoken thoughts. I was chopping vegetables, trying to focus on the mundane, but the silence between us was thick. "Mom," he said finally, "can we talk?" I set down the knife. "Of course," I said, my heart hammering gently, not knowing what this was about. He sat, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. "It's about us," he began. I thought he meant our family, our routines, maybe some small adjustment to life. But the words that followed felt sudden and sharp, even though he spoke softly. We got married." For a moment, the world tilted. I dropped the knife. The vegetables rolled across the counter. My mind tried to understand the sentence, tried to rearrange it into something normal. "You, what?" I managed. He looked down, shy and nervous. "Yesterday," he said. "We got married yesterday." I felt 1,000 emotions at once: shock, confusion, a strange swell of pride, and a quiet ache. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but I couldn't. I just nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "I see," I said. The days after the revelation were strange. Our house felt the same, but everything had changed. Every glance, every conversation carried a silent undercurrent. I wanted to speak, to understand, to be part of this new chapter of their lives, but I also wanted to respect their space. I tried to engage, to help her adjust to the house in a new way. I poured morning tea, asked about her day, offered small gestures of warmth. She smiled politely, but there was a distance now, a quiet boundary that hadn't been there before. I noticed my son, too, seemed uneasy. He would linger by the window, gaze out at the trees, as if trying to find calm in the rain. He didn't speak much about the wedding or the plans ahead. I realized then that even happiness can carry its own tension. Secrets, even joyful ones, can leave shadows. One afternoon, I found an invitation tucked into a drawer, a simple card beautifully printed. It was from her family. I realized then that their marriage had been planned quietly, deliberately, and that I hadn't known until the moment they told me. The ache in my chest deepened, not anger, not resentment, just a quiet, heavy longing to have been included. Evenings became the hardest. I would sit alone in the living room, watching the rain hit the window, listening to the soft hum of the city outside. I replayed conversations in my mind. Could I have noticed something earlier? Could I have asked differently? Every small memory became a question, every smile a mystery. I wanted to speak, to voice my feelings, but words felt inadequate. How could I express the mixture of pride, love, and quiet sorrow all at once? I realized that sometimes being calm isn't weakness. Sometimes it is the only way to hold yourself together when the world shifts beneath your feet. And then small moments reminded me of why I loved them so deeply. A soft laugh from the kitchen, the way he reached for her hand without thinking, the quiet way she brought me tea without a word. These small gestures were reassurance. Life was changing, yes, but love was still there. It was a quiet Saturday morning when everything finally felt different. The house smelled of fresh bread, the kind I sometimes baked for Sunday mornings, and sunlight poured lazily through the kitchen window. I was sipping my tea, watching steam rise in soft swirls, when she walked in. She didn't speak at first. She just set down her cup and looked at me, eyes steady, a small crease between her brows. I could tell something important was about to be said, though I had no idea what it might be. "Mom," she said softly, "I want to explain." I nodded, my hands folded around my own mug, trying to appear calm. Inside, my heart fluttered like a bird in a cage. I wanted to know, but I also feared the answer. "I know telling you the way we did, it wasn't ideal," she continued. "I should have spoken sooner, I should have included you, but I didn't know how." Her voice trembled just slightly, not out of weakness but out of honesty. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to reach out to tell her it was okay, but the words stuck in my throat. Then my son walked in, holding a small envelope. He placed it carefully on the table between us. I recognized the handwriting, his own, neat and precise. "I wanted you to have this first," he said, voice soft. "It's everything, plans, pictures, letters. I thought it might help." I reached for the envelope with trembling hands, feeling the weight of it. Inside were photographs I hadn't seen before, the two of them at the courthouse, laughing quietly, hands intertwined. A small bouquet of flowers in her hand. A simple ceremony, but every image radiated joy, a joy I had only glimpsed from the outside. Tears pricked at my eyes. I didn't feel anger exactly. Not yet. I felt the ache of being excluded, yes. But I also felt a deep, unshakable love for both of them. My son, growing into his own life. Her, the woman I had welcomed, who had quietly found her way into our family and hearts. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered finally. "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared of your reaction, of Mom, of everything." "And me?" I asked softly, almost afraid of the answer. "You're my mother," he said. "I love you. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought this way it would be easier. But it was." We sat in silence for a long time. Rain began to tap against the window, a soft, rhythmic pattern that mirrored the quiet storm inside me. I realized then that life is full of moments like this, moments that shake you, confuse you, and make you question everything. And yet, in the same breath, they also teach you about love, patience, and understanding. I looked at her. "You love him?" I asked quietly. She nodded, "With everything I have." "And you, my son?" I asked. "I've never loved anyone the way I love her," he said simply. I felt my heart loosen. The tension that had gripped me for weeks began to melt, replaced with something warmer, gentler. I realized that this wasn't about betrayal. It wasn't about being left out. It was about growth, about life moving forward, about the people we love making choices for their own happiness. The afternoon passed slowly. We made tea again, and for the first time in weeks, we talked like we used to. I asked questions, not probing, not angry, just curious. I wanted to know how they felt, how they had decided, how the day had gone. She laughed softly at small details, the way the officiant had misplaced his notes, the quiet jokes they had shared, the little mistakes that made it all feel real. My son spoke about the weight of the decision, the nervousness, the joy, and the relief. Every word he said made me see them both more clearly. I saw them not as children in my care anymore, but as people in love, people making their own way in the world. And still, there was a quiet ache, a quiet space left in my heart where the surprise had landed. But I understood, finally, that this ache wasn't anger. It wasn't resentment. It was the tender space where love and letting go meet. That evening, we sat together at the dining table. Dinner was simple: pasta, bread, a salad. The rain had slowed outside, leaving the world washed clean and quiet. I noticed how she passed him the bread, how he reached across to squeeze her hand. They were a team, together in a way I could feel even from across the table. I found myself smiling, not just because they were happy, but because I realized that families grow, families shift. Love doesn't end when something changes, it transforms. "Mom," my son said after a pause, "I hope you're not upset with us." I shook my head, tears brimming. "Upset," I whispered. "No, just surprised, that's all." They smiled at me, relief softening their faces. And I knew then the turning point wasn't just their marriage. It was me learning to let go, learning to trust, and learning that love is bigger than the rules we sometimes make for it. Late that night, I sat alone in the living room, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The rain had stopped, and the world outside glimmered under streetlights. I thought about how life can change in a moment, how words like, "we got married yesterday," can shift the landscape of your heart. I reflected on weeks of tension, moments of quiet worry, and all the questions I hadn't asked. And I realized something important. Love doesn't need permission. Joy doesn't need approval. Sometimes the most meaningful moments are the ones that surprise us, challenge us, and make us reflect on what truly matters. I smiled softly, imagining them together upstairs. My son, calm and certain, her, glowing and quietly happy, and me, learning to hold space for their happiness, even when it wasn't what I had expected. It was a quiet turning point, not loud, not dramatic, just real, just life moving forward. And in that, I found a deep, gentle peace. The days after their secret wedding felt different, but not in a way that was uncomfortable. Life had shifted, yes, but it was settling into a new rhythm. I noticed small changes in the house. The way she left little notes on the fridge, the way my son lingered a moment longer by her side before leaving for work. I watched them, and I felt a mixture of pride, love, and a gentle sadness for the days that had quietly passed me by. I started taking long walks in the mornings, just me and the quiet streets. The air was crisp, sometimes heavy with the scent of rain, sometimes light and warm with sun. I needed that time to think, to breathe, to process. And as I walked, I realized that change doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it comes quietly, and it is up to you to notice it, accept it, and let it shape you. I found myself in the kitchen one evening, preparing dinner as they sat at the table, chatting softly about their day. I listened more than I spoke. I realized that my presence didn't need to dominate. My role had shifted. I wasn't just a mother now. I was a witness to their life, a part of their new story, and that was a gift. She came over to help me with the vegetables. "Do you want me to chop these?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Please." We worked side by side, hands moving in rhythm, the sound of the knife on the board gentle and steady. I felt a warmth I hadn't noticed in weeks. It wasn't just the kitchen lighting or the familiar smells. It was the feeling of understanding, of acceptance, of letting go without losing love. One afternoon, my son invited me to see their wedding album. I sat with them on the couch, pages spread out between us. I smiled at the images, the way their hands held each other, the laughter in their eyes, the simple joy that filled the pictures. "See," my son said softly, "it wasn't so bad, was it?" I laughed quietly. "It was different," I said, "but good different." She nodded. "We wanted you to know how much we love each other, and how much we love you too." Tears gathered in my eyes. I reached for both of their hands. "I know," I whispered, "and I love you both too." It was a small moment, but it meant everything. I realized then that love isn't just about being part of the decision. It's about holding space, witnessing, and supporting, even when it surprises you, even when it challenges you. In the following weeks, our home returned to its gentle rhythm. Mornings still carried the smell of coffee and toast. Evenings still held quiet conversations at the table. But now, there was a new layer of understanding, a subtle joy that hadn't been there before. I found myself laughing more easily at their jokes, listening more attentively to their stories, and feeling a deeper connection to both of them. I realized that sometimes happiness isn't about control. It isn't about being included in every decision. It's about allowing those you love to grow, even when that growth takes you by surprise. One evening, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. I thought about the past weeks, the shock, the tension, the quiet moments of doubt. And I realized that every feeling had been necessary. Each one had led me here to a place of peace, understanding, and love. I whispered to myself softly, "This is what it means to love, to let go, and still hold close." The rain returned later that night, gentle and steady, tapping against the window pane. I watched it for a long time, feeling a quiet gratitude for the lessons, for the growth, and for the people I loved. Life had shifted, yes, but it was still beautiful. I began to notice the small gestures of care more than ever. The way she left his favorite mug on the counter. The way he paused to ask if I wanted another slice of bread. These tiny moments spoke louder than words ever could. They reminded me that love isn't always grand or dramatic. It's in the small, everyday acts that show connection, thoughtfulness, and respect. And I felt it in myself, too. I felt a new softness in my heart, a deeper patience, and an understanding that happiness grows best when it is shared freely, without expectation, without resentment. One night, as I watched them together, I realized that I had learned something important about family. It isn't just about proximity or being present for every moment. It's about understanding that love is bigger than surprise, bigger than secrecy, bigger than the ways we expect life to unfold. I realized that my role had changed, yes, but it had also grown. I was no longer just a mother. I was a grandmother in waiting, a witness, a supporter, a keeper of love's quiet flame. And I knew in my heart that this was enough. The days settled into a gentle rhythm. Mornings brought soft light through the windows, evenings held quiet conversations at the table, and the little moments, the laughter, the shared meals, the simple gestures, reminded me of the strength of love. I watched my son and his wife move through life together, side by side, and I felt a quiet joy I hadn't expected. It struck me then how much life teaches us through surprise. How a single moment, a single sentence, like "we got married yesterday," can shift your entire perspective. At first, it had felt like a storm, sudden and unkind. But in truth, it was a lesson. A lesson in trust, in letting go, and in understanding that love often finds its own way. If this emotional story resonated with you, like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life stories of courage and family struggles. I found myself thinking about the importance of patience, the power of quiet observation, and the gentle art of acceptance. I realized that love doesn't demand control. It doesn't require approval or understanding at every step. It simply asks us to be present, to witness, and to hold space for the people we care about, even when life surprises us. One evening, I sat on the sofa with a cup of tea, watching them in the living room. They laughed softly over something trivial, hands brushing naturally. I felt a warm weight in my chest, the kind that comes from knowing that life is fragile, yes, but also beautiful. That love, even when it moves in ways we don't expect, is still real, still strong, still ours. And I thought about family, the quiet truths we learn as we grow older. That sometimes, being part of someone's life doesn't mean knowing every secret, attending every event, or controlling every choice. It means caring, supporting, and loving unconditionally. It means trusting that those we love will find their way, and that happiness, when shared, becomes something larger than any one of us. I whispered softly to myself as the evening light dimmed, "This is love, this is family, this is enough." Life continued, not in dramatic leaps or sudden storms, but in soft moments of understanding, laughter, and shared warmth. The small gestures became our stories, the coffee poured, the bread shared, the hands held. Each one a reminder that even when the path is unexpected, love can guide you home. And I learned, finally, that the surprises in life, the sudden turns and hidden moments, aren't threats to our hearts. They are reminders that love is alive, that growth is constant, and that our role in the lives of those we love is not to control, but to witness, support, and cherish. So when my daughter-in-law said, "We got married yesterday," I didn't respond with anger or disappointment. I smiled. I held my heart open. And I learned something quiet but profound. Life will surprise you, yes. It will challenge you. But love, the true, enduring kind, is always bigger than fear, bigger than secrecy, and bigger than any expectation we might carry. And in that knowledge, I found peace. I found hope. And I found the gentle certainty that, no matter how life unfolds, love is enough.